So we'll open this conversation. So, Doctor, you would have the first question?
So I'll borrow this mic?
Yes.
Okay. So, good morning. Good morning. It's such an honor to share space with you this morning and to savor the delicious recipes that you've shared with all of us. So I have a question. What are some of the signature dishes that you grew up with, other than the dishes that you've shared with us this morning, that root you in your identity, that root you in your ancestral lands, or in the landscape where you live?
I grew up in Monterrey, so I wouldn't say that I grew up eating very ancestral Asian cuisines. We were very much colonized, and the food is a great example. It's not like Oaxaca and Yucatan where they still keep very traditional ways of cooking. Monterrey is kind of like a very metropolitan area, so I feel like it's more. You see a lot of those ingredients that were brought in after the Spanish conquistadors. So we eat a lot of flour tortillas. So that's what I grew up with. Picadillo, flautas. So I think it's a combination of both. But yeah, we are very heavy on. In a way, it's very similar to Texas Mexican food. A lot of people say tacos, real Mexican tacos are not made with flour tortillas, but I'm from the north, so I grew up eating tacos with flour tortillas. So although flour is not a nation ingredient, it's very much part of my history.
Thank you.
I'm originally from San Antonio, so I had the best of three worlds. Three cities, and one is New Orleans, San Antonio, and Houston. So Cajun style of food, soul food, and very Mexican dishes. That carne casada is one of my favorites when I did eat meat. And growing up, we didn't have the best of both worlds when it comes to financial. So I watched my grandmother create dishes out of anything, and the most one I can always remember was pimento beans.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that with rice, and that fed the family for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
So fortunate that I had a chance to, with my Louisiana side of people, from gumbo to crawfish etouffee, things of that nature, blackened fish. So I had a chance to experience all that. Now, 24 years in the business, I'm able to do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
What was the dish? What was the dish you said?
The pimento beans.
Pimento beans?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saldana, for that amazing presentation.
Yes.
That was great. I'm a big fan. I related so much to your story because of, my family were migrant farmers, and so they got government food, which was the processed cheese, the yellow cheese, right? And people, that's not Mexican cheese, or if you make your bean and cheese with that, that's not authentic. Or they got Spam too. So we do tamaladas, right? And we eat flour tortillas, and when we do these tamaladas, my father is still very nostalgic for some of his childhood food, where the rest of his sisters are like, ugh. So when we do a tamalada, he brings Spam. And we bring Spam, and we mix it with jalapeno, and we make Spam tamales. And it's really unique. It's really fun. It's actually really delicious. I invite you to try it at your next tamalada. So it's not just one dish. I think it's just knowing where it comes from. So, when you eat that, my grandma, when she would plate the table, she would put pieces of the yellow cheese, so you would eat it with your beans and family style, and so it's almost a way, it's more of, beside what the dish is, it's just how are you eating it and with whom, and is it individualistic? Is it you just in your own plate, or is it family style? You know, and I think the family style and the way of eating is what really keeps me grounded, is the sharing and the passing of the plate, literally, around, and being conscious that what you take, you only take so much because you're sharing it with the rest of the table. No, thank you for that question.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for that presentation. I learned a lot, and the way you pulled everything together was beautiful. I was raised in poverty in East Texas, and my mother cooked what she could get. And at the beginning of my life, and in my childhood, I remember that we had a garden that was as big as our house. The square foot was as big as and our house wasn't that big, but the point was, and at the time, you know, you're a child and you don't really know. But looking back and talking to her, I know that, and she worked full time. She worked full time at a place that took her 45 minutes to get to. And I know now that she was growing that garden and canning that food to feed us. And so she was raised in the country, and we had just country food, whatever she could grow in the garden, and lots of beautiful ways that she would put it together. And as a child, I don't even remember. I just remember that the plates were always full of vegetables and always colorful, and the meat was always fried. But because she was a single mom, there wasn't like a dish in my childhood that she would produce over and over again so that I could have a favorite dish, because she cooked what was available. But on my grandmother, and again, it's all colonization, because my grandmother was raised in that area, and my grandmother's Yuchi, and she didn't grow up where our Yuchi ancestors are from. So my recipes from childhood are from my grandmother, and I looking back at them, I realize how indigenous they are. One is snow ice cream. Yeah, one was snow ice cream. I only had snow ice cream at my grandma's house, and we loved making it, and she made it such an adventure, and she made it so fun, and it was like the most delicious ice cream I had ever had in my life. And still to this day, I can taste and feel the crystals melting at the back of my mouth from the snow ice cream. And no baked cookies. They're chocolate cookies that are made with oatmeal and peanut butter. And I realize now that Granny was making things that didn't cost any energy that she had to pay for. You know what I mean? I realize that now as an adult. So my childhood memories are from that. But I have wonderful food from my Caddo-ness when I went back to learn how to be Caddo. I was introduced to some of our old food, and one recipe that I really love is called hibushko. And it's basically any kind of meat, sliced super thin, and you put it in the pot, and you fill it up with water to just about an inch above the meat. And when the water gets to bath water temperature, you stick your hand in there, and you squeeze the meat. And as I was taught, you squeeze the meat until your hand hurts. And then you just slowly cook it. And that's all you do. There's no salt, there's no pepper, there's nothing but the meat and the blood of the meat and your energy that put it in there. It is incredibly delicious. And any kind of meat. You could use anything with it because you're slicing it so thin, and the blood is the chemical that's cooking it. So that would be my favorite Caddo dish, but my other ones are from my grandma that use it with no energy. That I just figured out that she's using it with no energy.
And yeah, if, Dr. Bush or Dr. Montaño, if you have any questions for the deep dive?
Yeah, we've talked about the rhythms of the season, about the pecans, and about when yucca flowers aren't available and you use Belgian endive instead. But I wanted to ask, since y'all are the breakfast crew, about the rhythms of the day. What do you like to eat yourself? What do you like to prepare for others to start the day, whether your day starts at dawn for the breakfast or maybe at noon because you're a night chef?
Start that.
Y'all answer those questions.
Sure.
Your question was, what do we like to cook for others for breakfast? Like,
What do you find appropriate to start the day with? For
okay,
yourself or for others?
this is a very, very easy question for me. I am a breakfast person. It's my favorite meal of the day. I can eat breakfast for lunch and dinner. And it's very simple. My favorite thing to do in the mornings is migas. Do not cut them. Just tear them with your hand. Otherwise, you're disqualified. I'm just kidding. You gotta tear them with your hand. You can't cut them. It can't have sharp, nice edges. It has to look like a map. Yeah. Yeah, migas. And then I like to just no nothing, like just tortilla, butter, and egg. That's all. It's a very humble dish, and it's my favorite. And I love. If I care about you, I'm gonna make you migas.
Oh,
Well, my favorite is first nice Colombian coffee. Yes, and so when I'm out of the country, if I'm going out or somebody coming in, bring me some coffee. I want to experience it all over the world. But a simple dish is a veggie omelet. And again, everything comes from my garden because I've been having a garden my grandmother taught me this about to tell my age, about 50 years ago. Wow. Yeah, and just learning the garden from her, it's given me a green thumb. And so I started my gardening back in January. So it's really easy for me now to do a veggie omelet for anyone that comes by. Yeah.
Okay. My breakfast it's seasonal. It depends, right? Like, so yes, it does. Like right now, I'm thinking, what have I been preparing? So, fresh fruit with some maybe cashew yogurt and cinnamon and agave. Or if the fruit is sweet enough, no agave. But my wife has the biggest sweet tooth, so I have to put a lot of agave in her bowl, right? So, yes. But yeah, also just using chia seeds as well in there. So just because it's summer, so it's hot, or spring supposedly, right? But it's hot as summer. So just, I know my body's going to stay warm. So I try to eat more cooling foods versus, in the winter or fall when things start to get colder, then yes, I'm craving more heartier things like the chilaquiles and like the atoles and things like that. So. Mm-hmm. Thanks for the question. Okay.
Okay. I have a mic too. I use both of them. When you talked about your dishes, it brought a lot of memories for me too, because you talked about picadillo, chilaquiles, and tortillas de harina, and that's what I was brought up as a child. I mean, that's what I know. But I'm also interested if any of you create new things or experimented with the picadillo or with Cajun food. What did you add to it? Because when I traveled through South Texas, and once I was in Mission, Texas, and this friend said, I'm going to make a dish that is creative, that I want to do it. It's for especially for Sunday football, the NFL. And he said, this dish is called El Border Patrol Special. And then he had another one say, it's the Cowboy Special. Or would make pollos a la bruja, and then pollos llorones, and pollos de zancudo. So he did them. But I'm going to say I was there in that household, and the TV was there. But his friends that came after 2 beers, they ate the Cowboy Special. But I noticed that his immediate family, did not eat it. But he creates. But my point is that people are very creative with food. And they change food, and they add, mix, and combine. And also he told me, well, my friends love to eat, so I can make anything. And the pollos a la bruja, just to give you an idea how people want to be creative. He got a broom. And then he put foil paper in the room, all that, okay? And stuck the pollos to them, like 4 or 5, and then he would turn it around the grill, and then made it pollos a la bruja. So I said, well, I mean, it's still grilled chicken. I mean, so I was and one thing I like is I like the food from Mission, Texas, or La Jolla to Brownsville because I have found people are very creative. So in your case, I want to know, how have you changed the foods that you grew up with? What have you added? I mean, so I see people doing that all the time, in their houses.
Thank you for putting me in the spot. It's easier when other people go first, but it's okay. So to answer your question, there's two answers. The main one is like, yes, there are dishes that I like to play around with. So for example, an aguachile is a very simple dish. It's shrimp, cucumber, lime, cilantro, serranos, blended, layer marinade. But I like to play with that dish, and I make a passion fruit aguachile with habanero instead. But that's just an example. Nothing too crazy. If I'm being honest, I don't really mess a lot with that fusion and changing the dish a lot. I like to just keep it simple. My type of food is just fresh ingredients made from scratch. But what I do change a lot and what I do focus more on is, picadillo. I have proof that I made it last week because it's in my Instagram stories. So I will use that as an example, right? What I am doing that's different from what I was raised with is making like a healthier version of it. Unfortunately, I was diagnosed with a disease that it's basically just eating my immune system away. So I had to start changing, not only in my restaurant, but like also in my house, the way of cooking. So very quick, an example of it is the picadillo. I use lots of vegetables in it as opposed to just the canned vegetables that my grandma would use, like the mixed ones. I'd put a lot of rainbow carrots, even cauliflower. And then one thing I do not use, I know this is not like back in the day, but the modern Mexican cuisine, and hate me if you want, but the Nor Suiza, the chicken bouillon powder with the green cap, that's like a staple in every Mexican household. You will never find it in my cooking. So I found ways to bring flavor to the food without using these additives that are completely unnecessary if you use the right ingredients. So yeah, a lot of the dishes that I make, I taste and I'm like, damn, this doesn't taste like my grandma, but that's the point. Unfortunately, I grew up, like in Monterrey, we are not known for using fresh ingredients. Like, at least in my experience, it's very heavy, very, very heavy food. So yeah, that's how I've been doing things differently from what I grew up with, just making a healthier version of the dish.
Thank you. Well, what I did different is a year ago, I stopped eating meat. So all the different dishes I do now, from Cajun style to Mexican style, American style, Italian, I'm doing it all in a way of vegetarian and vegan. So the ground for just doing a street taco is basically plants from a bell pepper, from a chili that I'm growing. So, my biggest thing now in life is eat to live. So I've done away with all the different things when it comes to regular meat. No different with it because I still sell it and I still cook it for my clients. But at the same time, it gave me the opportunity to take a Cajun dish, again, like I said before, a Mexican dish, any kind of Italian seafood dish, and challenge myself with it. So, like one of the Cajun dishes is like a gumbo. So substituting the shrimp, chicken, sausage, and crabs, I did it with a bell pepper, squash, zucchini, things of that. Still based in a roux that is made with an old grease. It can't be no new grease. It has to be a seasoned well old grease with flour, and that's the base of it. And so that's what I've done different now is creating dishes vegan dishes and vegetarian dishes from the regular style of cooking. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. It really resonates with me because that's actually how I got into the chef world or the cooking world, was because I was living in San Diego, and I was before that I was more pescatarian and vegetarian. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try going vegan, and I'm gonna eliminate, all this stuff from what I'm consuming. And then I thought, well, what if I veganize my family recipes? And before that, I wasn't really into the kitchen, to be honest. I was like, I'm a woman and I'm not gonna be barefoot in the kitchen and like da 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 da, right? And so, yeah, and then I got in there and I started I started being a chemist, right? It started feeling like chemistry, and magic. And I started creating these, family recipes and veganizing them and having them taste it and like it. And that's when I started to enjoy cooking, and because I really realized how magical it is and how powerful you are when you are the cook, right, and the chef, right? So I've done a lot of different recipes. I've done picadillo with pecans. Yeah, so I've got a slew of recipes that I've shifted from my family and made them plant-based. So thanks for that question.
Okay, Diana. Now let's shift a little bit to the other visiting chefs. Do you have any comments or questions? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
My chair.
Anybody? Sure, yeah. Go ahead.
We're talking about changing recipes.
Just throw your voice.
Changing recipes, yeah, I love to culture hijack food. I know that's a terrible word, but I love it. Actually, Rebel and I did a pop-up 2013. 20 years ago? 2013, and we veganized one of the most iconic meats in Texas, barbacoa. And I was doing extensive Asian training at the time. So I was understanding different soy sauces, dark soy, light soy, mushroom seasonings, fish sauce. And through the utilization of those flavor profiles together with jackfruit and a very long cooking process, we made vegan barbacoa. Right, and it fooled you. You were like, what is, it was sticky, it was beautiful. And so I love to understand that sometimes ingredients demand that you pair them up with pork, right? Like, I make now a lengua barbacoa only utilizing Asian ingredients, and I have the most traditional Mexican chefs taste it, and they'll tell you like, ¿por qué prueba Michoacán? And then they're like, why'd you use white pepper? I'm like, it's good. It's fun, right? It's fun, right? Like, so authenticity to who? And I tell them, if we don't do that as chefs, as culinarians, then you're limiting the progress of this art, right? Then that means you're limiting the identity of who we can be in the future. So I love it, but of course, always taking it back to that inspiration of the land and the profile that I was so inspired by.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that question because it's something that I think we all do in our own ways. And for me, like, I resonate a lot with the stories of like growing up with a lot of processed foods and things that, like I grew up as a chubby kid and I just didn't know why. And it was like not wanting to, like not really understanding like what we were eating and why we were eating that. Like growing up in the Valley, one of the things I ate a lot was a Q taco, like from Stripes, which is just like a flour tortilla, bean, egg. And when I was living down there during the pandemic, I was doing like a series of brunch pop-ups, and I consulted with like Chef Nadia to like do an homage to that taco. And it was like trying to figure out how to like still connect it to like a deeper lineage. So Nadia told me to do like a tlacoyo instead. So it was a breakfast tlacoyo. The tlacoyo was filled with like beautiful heirloom beans that I got from Mexico and American cheese. And then on top, you had the same ingredients on it, which was like fried potatoes, eggs, and bacon, but on a very beautiful old, like that tlacoyo that just dates like before the tortilla even. And you know, using the same like nixtamal process, grinding the masa, and doing all that. Also got to do like masa pancakes with like a chorizo maple syrup, which is like playing with like this kind of Mexican American Tejano like indigenous identity, and just like trying to put all of that in something that is like playful and accessible to like our community, and can spark these kinds of like conversations, you know. So that's my like background with that.
Anybody? All right. If any of the other chefs want to add something? No? I know you do. No. No, you don't.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. That's very. Yes, it's the champagne cocktail. That's actually. Do you have any comments or questions back here? We're going to go back and forth. If you have any questions about for the scholars or any of the chefs who cooked the meal, please. And then.
This is for Chef McKinney. I don't remember if you said you'd done grape dumplings before, but was there any concern when you were asked to cook that food?
Yes,
Okay,
indeed.
now I'll repeat the question for Chef McKinney. I don't know if you said that you had cooked grape dumplings before. Was there any concern that you felt when you were asked to do that?
Yes. First, it was like, what is it again? And first thing I did, I called you, and he said, "Well, I'm gonna try it myself." And he kept saying to me, "Well, how about you come? Can I come over with you?" And it became a challenge to me. And when it's a challenge and a passion to something that I like doing, I don't want no one there. I want to focus on this.
Yeah.
And it took me 3 days of focusing and trying to prepare it. And it was like, okay, well, do you want to do it 2 days before or the day before? And then so I did a little bit of research on it. And after that, it was like, okay, the first batch went in. I'm like, oh, something's, because I'm, talking to you, and you was telling me, like, it was a little doughy. I said, no, let me go back on it. Let me make it a little bit bigger and make sure it's boiling at a certain temperature. And once it boiled, it puffed.
Yes.
And it was too big. But at the time, I said, okay, what I would do is let me cut them so all the grape juice can get inside of them. And then after that, it just started coming natural. And from that, at the end of it, I noticed that the grape juice and the dumplings, it made a syrup. And what I did is kept the syrup and let that marinate for a whole 24 hours and use it today. And that's where I didn't have to add any sugar or anything to sweeten it, because it basically sweetened itself.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Process on learning how to do it.
Yeah.
That is how people go through batches that, why did, and adjusting it. You did
Yeah.
what every cattle woman ever did.
Thank you.
Yes.
So my question is, for those of us who may have lost the elders in our family who carry the tradition, or may not have yet found our footing in the kitchen, what would your advice be in terms of an entry point? Where do you begin in your journey with Comida Casera?
Anybody? Yes, please.
It's a great question. As I continue to, go to my ancestral indigenous roots, it teaches you to really connect with food on a spiritual level, on a way in which you may pray over what you're doing the whole time you're doing it, is understanding that it's something that is a spiritual practice, a medicinal practice. And for me, there is a conjuring in a way as well, where you're asking, hey, those who have passed and gone before me, I invite you into this kitchen with me. And, maybe you'll feel inspired to add something or mix something a certain way. To me, that's very much what I believe and how I operate in the kitchen now. So, that's maybe my suggestion that could help. And I think just starting small, too. I think people get overwhelmed trying to, do everything from scratch or make everything authentic or indigenous or whatever it is. And really, it's like, one piece of your meal, try, from scratch so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming, and you can start small and then keep building on it. And you don't, and be kind to yourself, and understand that it's an experiment. So sometimes experiments go really well and sometimes they end up not going well. And either you have to throw them away or you eat them, maybe you're not smiling, but it's edible. So to be gentle and kind as you're learning and growing as you would with anything new. So, that's what I would say.
There may be others who want to. Yes. Before you do that, I want to underscore one aspect of your question that's important to me, and that is that you want to, and you miss those elders if they're not there. What is the prompting that is guiding you to want to do that? To me, that's what all of these chefs have, these 10 chefs who've not had an opportunity before to gather like this and to resonate and to hear el eco de las mismas voces that they hear from someone else that's inside of them. There is something profound about wanting that. And I think it's about being in this space in a new way, being in this land in a new way, and we know that there's something richer and deeper that's more than the surface. So I like that question. How can we search for those things? I think all of you, the chefs here, are going in that direction naturally. So I just wanted to underscore that part of the question.
My answer is not as profound. It's a little bit more technical, and it's something that I had to do. I lost my maternal grandma at a very, very young age. I don't remember even how old I was. And then I had to leave my paternal grandma when I moved to this country at a very young age, and then I wasn't able to go back. And then my mom, she's a very modern woman. And so to say that I had that background, when people come to my restaurant, oh, who taught you this? Or did your grandma teach you this? Your mom, your aunts? It was just me and my mom was working 2 jobs. So there was none of that going on in my experience. So when I decided to open the restaurant, I knew I wanted to do traditional-ish Mexican food. I noticed that there was a little scarcity of that back 7 years ago. A lot of it was more Tex-Mex. So I did what any modern chef would do nowadays. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to answer this question because I don't want anybody to feel like you're cheating or it's not right. YouTube, books, internet. I did that, and I am not ashamed of it. I did what I had to do to reconnect and learn more about my cuisine and my culture. And, it's 2023, so there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
And I say that you do both of what they're advising. I say that you go back and figure out where your ancestors came from, what part of the land they came from. And we all know that each region has different foods and different styles. And once you figure out the region, then go look for authentic chefs are grounded in that region and their cookbooks and what they do. And then you read the recipes and you decide which one calls to you. And when you get ready to do it, then you do what Rebel said. Then you hold space and you call in your ancestors and you tell them, I'm starting this process. Please be with me as I go forward. And I promise you, they will be with you. And because you're talking about it, they're so excited and just waiting for you to get started. But we're all in the same boat. I don't I'm going to have, luckily with the people at Cattle Mounds and some of our ancestors, we will begin to reproduce recipes that were made prior to colonization. But we can't do that now because of colonization. So I'm like you. You know what I mean? The recipes that were handed out from my family are colonized recipes. But the universe has opened up a way, so I say do both.
Wow, great. Do you want to say? Yes.
Once you start your journey and you've found your way in the kitchen and you've connected with your roots and you find the recipe that really speaks to you, document it. As the documenter of my family, anytime I remember something about my abuelita and I want to nail a dish and I practice, once I get it, because of course it'll never taste like hers, but as soon as I get it, that it gets close to it, document it. I have video, I have voice, me speaking about it, I write it, I photograph it, document it, so that what you've missed, your future generations can have to treasure.
That's wonderful. I'd like to ask Christine, who appears in the video, in the film, Truly Texas Mexican. You actually see her there recovering barbacoa de pozo. So could you add?
Well, my experience was that there was nobody to ask either when I started cooking cabeza de pozo. But I wanted to have a birthday party. And I wanted it to be like 2-3 days, which is how long it takes to cook food underground. So we didn't know how to do it because my grandparents used to do it, and we didn't have anybody. We were asking the elders, and everybody kept saying, do YouTube, do YouTube. And, I wanted to do YouTube, and I wanted to do all of that, and I did sort of do that, but we did trial and error. It took me 5 years before I finally got the cabeza de pozo to come out perfect. So I would say just ask your elders and ask people that you don't know. I asked my gardener, who was from Mexico, how he did it. And so you learn as you go, you collect knowledge, and then you apply it. That was my process. It's just, I asked every elder I could find, and then I just applied it in my own way. So I have great birthday parties in February.
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
I've been a chef for over 24 years. I was handed 3 recipes 4 days ago. So I'm letting you know. So the Chicano 40 and the jalapeno champagne and the Cando, I'm saying that right? Cattle great dumplings. That was all handed to me 4 days ago. So again, like what you're saying, starting something, and like they said, going back to the ancestors and things of that nature. And that's what I did. I just went into my own zone and focus. And it's trial and error for the first time, even with the Chicano 40, it's a lot of different liquors. So we sat there like, okay, is this it? And I don't drink. I stopped drinking as well a year ago. But I had to try this just to make sure it was perfect. And I think all three things we made by the recipes itself, it came out perfect.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
I would like to draw attention to the aspect of comfort food that was presented this morning, because we live in a very crazy, violent, scary world. And so, and I work in the field of domestic violence. And so when I heard what Rebel Mariposa said about her atole and how she connected it to her gentle and loving father, and how our world needs to bring back those aspects of masculinity that in our world get crushed and eliminated and disseminated because we have these expectations of men that have to be tough and violent and brutal, and then connecting it back to the Mother Earth and how our Mother Earth expects, we need to take care of our Mother Earth and the ingredients that she brought to her food from Mother Earth, and transforming male energy to comfort and tenderness and gentleness that our families and our world need. I just started crying to hear her talk like that about the cooking and the food and the processes and its impact. So Rebel, thank you so much for bringing that up, and it was beautiful, and all I could think about was my dad.
I felt the same way.
Right?
I felt the same way.
It was powerful.
And then when you tasted it,
Yes.
it tasted like Mother Earth.
Oh my God.
You know, I felt the same way when she was talking yesterday. Absolutely.
I too, during the comments, felt tearing up. We're going to now trim this down. We'll have a fairly long break. The chefs are cooking the lunch, and the theme of the lunch is Traditions Innovation. The opening background dialogue will be by Dr. Mario Montaño, the Spanish expeditions in the 1600s, 1700s, and that'll open up. And then we're going to taste the 3 dishes by the chefs. They're working back there. So let's take a good 25-minute break. We'll take a long break. You can have coffee and others, and then we'll reconvene in 25 minutes, and we'll have that and the lunch. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, chefs.